Hi there. Welcome to the Creative Academy, your go-to source for accountability, coaching, and community for writers. I'm Crystal Stranaghan, and today we're chatting about rebranding and relaunching a series with author JP McLean. So welcome, Joanne. And I would love it if first you could just tell us a little bit about you and your books so that we have some context for the rest of this chat.
No, thanks for having me here, Crystal. I write fantasy fiction, and I have a 7-book series out called The Gift Legacy. And the first book originally came out in 2012. And back then, of course, I didn't know I was writing a series. So it's been an interesting ride through getting to 7 books, and a lot has changed along the way,
Nice.
including the latest, which is the rebrand.
Yeah, and so what kind of a timeline are we looking at here? Like, when did you write your first book?
The first book came out originally in 2012. And then I put a book out pretty much every year since then until last year when I had 2 new books ready to come out. And at that point, I decided to address the rebranding issue because there's never a good time to do it, but ahead of a new book coming out is probably one of the better times to do it.
Right. And what was it that made you want to take on that rebranding?
Readers primarily. It had always been, I had always known that there were people who didn't like the covers, or not that they didn't like them, but that they interpreted them to be of either a spiritual or a religious theme or genre. And that wasn't the case. And I did initially ignore that feedback, thinking that, of course, not everyone's going to like the covers or the titles. But a couple of things highlighted to me that I was having trouble. And one of them was when I was at a craft fair or a farmer's market last summer. A fella came up to the table where I was selling my books and told me that he had avoided my table, thinking that I was trying to sell religious material. And so that was a surprise that I had actually lost a sale or potentially lost a sale. And how many others had I lost from other passersby who thought the same thing? And the same feedback was coming from other people that were selling my book, like my sister-in-law who sells a lot of my books. Her friends were asking, is this book religious? So I just got tired of saying, no, they aren't religious, and decided that I better address that issue with the rebrand.
Right. Nice. And so once you had decided to go ahead with it, how did you find the right people to do the new covers? What did that process look like?
That process was hunt and peck search. So I went to the organizations that I belong to and asked for their input. Sometimes the organizations would have services that they recommend. I also checked out the book designer, Joel Friedlander, who has a website, and he does book cover awards every month. And in those awards, he mentions and links to quite frequently the designers who designed the cover. So I checked out as many of those as I could. I also asked fellow authors for their recommendations, fellow fantasy authors as best I could, because I realized one of the things that I perhaps didn't pay enough attention to when I did the original covers was I hired graphic designers who did beautiful work, but they weren't cover designers. And as it turns out, that is a distinction that my books in any case is quite important, because the books didn't fit within the genre properly. I thought they looked great because they were just a little bit different than all the other books, but they were too different from all the other books, which was a mistake. So after I had a sheet full of names of designers, I then narrowed it down according to the price, because of course that's a huge consideration, especially when you're doing 7 books. And the other thing that I didn't think about at the time was availability, because these people book 3-4 months out, especially for a series. So that was something else that I had to consider. And it actually put me back way longer than I thought it was going to take to do the books. So once I took all of that into consideration, I narrowed it down to 2 that were in serious contention. And I ended up they were neck and neck. So I ended up going with the fellow that offered me the best package. So he didn't necessarily, his prices weren't necessarily lower. They weren't lower. But what he offered me, in addition to what the other company was offering, was he also prepared banners for me for Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus, which, you know, we won't be needing much longer, but I could also use them on LinkedIn and I could use them on YouTube.
Right.
So each book as it comes out has the main cover on it, and then as the next book comes out, the first cover fades into the background and the new cover becomes the prominent cover. And he's done that for all 7 books, so I'm ready to go right through the series.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great thing to look at, whatever the bonus extras might be, or looking at having your marketing materials prepped at the same time is really smart. So you end up with something that is really representative of that new branding, and you're not left to kind of try to create that with the bits and pieces and then have that live up to the standards set by the new covers. So yeah, that's definitely smart.
Yes.
I'm curious, as you went through the process of rebranding those books and uploading them for sale, did you run into any problems or any limitations with that process on either Amazon, or if you're published wide on the other platforms?
I didn't have as much of a problem on Kobo. It seems to be a little easier. I directly upload to Kobo and I directly upload to Amazon. And then I tried D2D this time. I previously published with Smashwords, but this time I switched over to D2D because Smashwords they've got a great distribution system and they're terrific people, but I find their formatting really time consuming, whereas D2D is much easier to upload to. So I switched. D2D, of course, I didn't have any problem with because I hadn't been with them before. Kobo was really good, straightforward, easy, put the new one up, take the old one down. Now that Kobo distributes to Overdrive, which is where Canadian libraries get their books, they're a little more tricky in terms of the formatting, but I got through it. That took a bit to figure out. Got through it, no problem. With Amazon, the problem was transferring reviews. I had heard in many circles and private groups on Facebook and on the Twitterverse and all around that it was touch and go whether or not they would transfer your reviews if you changed your title. You can change your cover and you can change your ISBN number, you can change your publisher, but if you change your title, you cannot transfer your reviews over. And that, I think, is something that I didn't know going into it. I assumed I could, and a lot of the chat rooms said, well, if you don't get it transferred the first time, phone back or try back, and you'll eventually find someone who will do it. Well, that's not true. They actually won't do it. So that's very, very important consideration to take into account when you're deciding whether or not you're going to rebrand. You may decide, instead of changing the title, maybe you can get away with just changing your cover.
Yeah. And so if you have the same title, but you change your subtitle, I would imagine you can still get away with that as well, because that's not like if the primary title stays the same, but you adjust your subtitle. I don't know if that would be a possibility or not, but something to think about.
I don't know. I didn't change my subtitle. I changed my title.
Yeah.
I did the opposite. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Good to know in advance that might be a tricky thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think are some mistakes that authors might make when relaunching a series, or places that you've either thought you could do differently next time, as you've now been through the process?
I think the first consideration is the time frame you have to allow to do this. It's taken me almost a year, and that is an incredible amount of time. And during that time, it's really difficult to fit in writing. So I have actually not written for about 6 to 8 months, nothing other than blog posts and marketing material. So the time is a huge thing. The other thing, especially for series, for people to consider when they're doing this is your cover designer is probably going to be 3 months out. When you're negotiating with a cover designer, if you have more than one book, then negotiate concurrent work on your covers. I wish I had done that. I didn't even think of that. That was a surprise to me. I thought when it said on the instructions that I would get a new cover about every 6 days, because you get your first design in 6 days, but that's not how it works. The first cover took about a month to get, with all the back and forth, to get the way I wanted it. And then the second cover took a month. And then I started panicking because I thought 7 months, I already waited 3, and then it's going to take me another 7. But fortunately, we got better at working together, and he got a better idea of what I was looking for and was able to deliver it to me faster. But when I asked him if he could speed it up and give me 2 or 3 covers at a time, he said he couldn't. And it wasn't that he was being difficult. He's got staff, and he's assigned them work 3 months out, and he can't just adjust their schedule and shove me in. So if I was doing this again, I would definitely do at least 2 concurrent, maybe 3, because if they've got different designers working on them, it only takes it only took me about maybe 2 or 3 hours of looking at it to turn it around to him. And then he would have to take it back for 2 or 3 days in order to get it back to me, because he's got a lot more work than I do just looking at it. So that's a big thing. And it also takes time. It takes so much time and energy to rework if you're reworking your titles, you're reworking your taglines, you're reworking the descriptions in the back of your book, you're actually going through each internal file and finding all references to the old titles and taking them out and replacing them with the new ones. And you're reworking all your marketing materials. Even though you have to wait for your covers, you're still, you've got new bookmarks you've got to design, new business cards you've got to design, and banners if you're doing banners. I had some banners made. So it's just a tremendous amount of work, much more than I thought. It's kept me busy for so long. I'm so happy to be back to writing.
Nice. And can we take a look? I think that you have your before and after, and
Yes.
it would be really fun to see kind of that example of what you were talking about when you're comparing the sort of genre look of the different pieces.
So these are the original covers from left to right, book 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in addition to the covers, of course, the titles were a major problem because of the biblical language. They were getting misjudged as being spiritual or religious. Of course, hindsight's 2020. It's perfectly obvious now. I'm going to pull up the other picture and show you what the final looks like.
Wow. Yeah. So different. So different.
Very different.
They look so good, the new ones, though. They're great.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they're much better targeted, and that's the difference, I think, between going with a very talented graphic artist versus a talented cover designer. They know how to grab the genre that you're looking for, and some of them specialize in specific genres. And this company, and the company is JD&J Designs, by the way. I don't want to not mention them because they're critical. I can actually provide a link, Crystal, if you want to include a link in this.
That would be great.
To them, because they did a super job. Super easy to work with. Yeah, it was a good experience, a learning experience for sure. But yeah, I would hire them again. I would work with them again. They're good.
Nice.
I never thought I would like new covers as much as I like these.
Yeah, I love the feathers in the, like, worked into the letters. Yeah, that's very cool. And so just out of curiosity, what were the kinds of instructions you were giving them to work with from the beginning? Like when you said, okay, I need new covers for these, what information did you need to provide in order to get to where you wanted to be with these?
They send out a questionnaire, an extensive questionnaire. They ask for a lot of information about the book itself. So they want to know about the main theme and tone of your book. Then they also ask you to send them samples of book covers that you like and book covers that you don't like. And in addition to that, they ask for colors that you like and don't like, and things that you may not want to see in the book. or in the cover. For example, I really don't like the style where there's a frame around the book. That's just a personal preference of mine. So I use that as one of the design criteria. I also didn't want to have the flowy dress thing happening in mine because the character doesn't wear flowy dresses, whereas a lot of the fantasy covers have a figure on the front wearing a beautiful gown. That just wouldn't be appropriate for this particular one. I also made the point, and this is again a series thing that you should consider when you're rebranding a series, or even when you're just initially getting the covers for a series, is you want them to look good when they're spine out on a shelf. So it's important that the spines be aligned, even if it's not just the shelf. If you're going to put them in a box set, an ebook box set in the future, it's nice to have the spines lined up, especially the titles. Like your name is probably going to be lined up anyway, but personally, I think it looks better with the titles lined up as well. And the other thing with the series that I'd asked him to do was I wanted each cover to have a distinct color. The original ones did, as you can see, the blue, the green, the gold, the purple. And when we originally did the Secret Sky and Hidden Enemy, I hadn't realized how close the color was. And so when I looked at Secret Sky and the old Hidden Enemy, which was much bluer, and Lethal Waters, I thought, oops, we're getting into too much blue, 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 and I want people at a glance to know which book it is by color as well. So he went back, and that's another thing, is to make sure you're not locked into your design until they're done the whole series. Because he did go back, quite happily went back and added a color mask to Hidden Enemy so that it would differentiate it from Lethal Waters and Secret Sky. And the other thing that he kept open was the colors for the name, my name and the series name at the top. So he could have changed those out at any time if he needed to. Like, we didn't want two golds side by side or two purple side by side in terms of the coloring of the font for that. So just so much stuff that you have to consider. What else did he ask me? I think he asked me if I wanted to see what I definitely wanted to see on the cover. And I remember saying I wanted to see her. I wanted to see Emmeline Taylor, the main character, on the cover, but I didn't want her face on. I wanted her from the back or from the side or looking over her shoulder, but I didn't want a full-on frontal because I don't want the reader. I want the reader to conjure up what this person looks like and not the cover.
Right. Nice. Well, I would say you successfully communicated what you wanted, and they look fabulous. I'm curious to hear, at the end of another year, how much of a difference this has made overall in terms of your, it's what you're seeing in sales and the feedback you're getting from people as you're selling them at those fairs and markets. If you want to hit stop sharing screen, then we can pop back into our side-by-side view. There we go. Is there anything else that you would suggest to people if they're thinking about taking this on for themselves to do a rebrand of a series? Any other last pro tips or things you wish you could tell your past self?
Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I haven't missed anything important. I think one of the things that I haven't mentioned yet is how important it is that you make it super clear in your advertising and in your description that you have actually rebranded this book and you have published it previously. And I think that that's important on a number of fronts. You don't want readers picking up this book and then realizing they've read it before. Because two things could happen. They'll leave a nasty review for you, which nobody wants, or they could complain to the retailer, who will not be happy. And you don't want your buy button pulled for reasons that you could have avoided if you'd been upfront about it. So I know some people are not upfront about their rebranding efforts. I'm not going down that path. I want people to know. I appreciate my readers, and I have new books coming out, and I don't want them thinking that one of these rebranded books is one of the new ones. So I've put it in the online descriptions for all of the books that are rebranded, and I have put it in, it's on my website. I have a history of the books as they've been developed, so it's on the website. I've done a number of guest blog posts that I am reblogging that state that these are rebrands, and on my website you'll see the pictures of the old cover beside the new one. So I'm doing as much as I can to try to avoid being a problem.
Yeah, I would imagine the copyright page as well is a good place for people to mention
Yes.
this book previously published as, and then a name there is really helpful as well. Just if they are doing the look inside the book thing, that they can click then on, it'll show them the first, few pages or whatever it is that they can see immediately if they're checking the copyright date. First published on this date as this, this title, and then the new copyright date with the new information. Yeah. And did you have to change your ISBN?
And I did.
Did you get a new ISBN?
Yes. Yeah, you need a new ISBN with a new title. You're frozen up,
but not with a new cover. So just to be clear, just to be clear for anybody who is looking at that, if you don't change your title, you don't necessarily need a new ISBN, but you might choose to publish it as a second edition so that it's really clear that there was a first edition that had some differences. So that is an option in your Amazon account. When you go in, you can, there's an edition statement. So you can say a second edition of that book so that people know to watch for something that's different. And I'm curious, have you done the change your cover on Goodreads and stuff? Because I know with Goodreads, like I still have one of my books showing the original cover from 4 years ago because they don't really change them by themselves. You have to make that happen.
Yeah, they won't ever delete anything. I tried that. I just assumed they didn't want the old cover in there that was no longer available for purchase, but I was wrong. They want them all in there. But what they will do is they will connect them all and they will put the one you want on top as the most visible for all of them. So what I did was I added the book to Goodreads as soon as it was published. And then I contacted a librarian because I can't do that. I probably can do it, but I do it badly. So I contacted a librarian and asked her if she would please connect all the versions and put this new one on top. And she did it without hesitating and then thanked me for asking her to do it. So they were super helpful. And so now on Goodreads, all the books, when you go into Secret Sky, you'll see that it's the latest version of Awakening. She's done a great job connecting them all.
Nice. All right. Excellent. Anything else you wanted to add?
Take your old editions down. That's the other thing. Once the new edition is published, if you really want to stop the confusion, make sure that you take your old editions out of the sales channels so that they're no longer for sale anywhere. Yeah, I really can't think of anything else.
All right.
So that's the rebranding in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Joanne. I think that'll make it easier for other people who are contemplating this of whether or not it's the right thing to do and sort of what to put on their radar for steps to include in the process. So thank you so much for that. And we will look forward to hearing all about your increased sales numbers when you're ready to report back.
And I will supply you with the link for the book designers contest, as well as JD&J Designs who did the books.
Perfect. And that is so great. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. And for all of you out there, we look forward to seeing you around the Creative Academy. Now get back to writing. Thank you for being a part of this Creative Academy event. If you're not a member yet, join us today and unlock a wealth of resources, masterclasses, feedback opportunities, and online community events designed to help you reach the next step in your writing journey. No matter what stage you're at, we've got a helping hand to guide you along the way. Check out our free resource room if you'd like to get a taste of how we can help you reach your writing and publishing goals. Thank you for bringing us along on your writing and publishing journey, and Donna, Eileen, and I hope we'll see you around the Creative Academy soon.